If you're into the paranormal, then you know this photo. This photo right here is a lot of people's first introduction into the paranormal. But do you know who the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall is? I was graced with my own British tour guide, and we got to talk about the photo, the history, and the theories behind this paranormal touchstone. Welcome to Ladies Fright. My name is Joan. Welcome, Justin, the Paranormal Monkey. Would you like to say a little bit about yourself before we get into everything?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing for me is I've had this kind of interest in the paranormal, not a love as such, but it's been a massive interest in the paranormal for years, probably from the age of about 7 or 8, which is a bit like out there. But my home for, I'd say, about 8 weeks had a kind of poltergeist phenomenon, and my mum and my dad were experiencing lots and lots of very, very weird stuff in my home. But being only 7 or 8, they kind of shielded me from it and shielded my younger brothers from it. I can still remember certain things my parents would say. My dad would do it in a kind of jokey, fun way. Like, oh, the toys are moving around again, and oh, the TV's changing channel on its own, and this is fun. Yeah, he would say it across in a kind of, oh, is this just a thing, which is just what we're getting. And he didn't understand it. He wasn't religious. He wasn't particularly into the paranormal himself. He was just, he was a labourer. My mum worked in a kind of like care home. And so they really didn't understand what the hell was going on. The conversations kind of leaked through to me as an 8-year-old. And then as I got older, that never left me. So I was reading a lot, and particularly around poltergeist activity. A poltergeist phenomena just was it for me. I wanted to kind of experience it and see it and, read about it. So I was doing that. I joined the Society for Psychical Research, I think, when I was about 14. And so I was reading now kind of academic things, which I didn't really understand. And I was going through this, and, as life goes on, other things kind of take its place, and you get married. I got divorced, I had kids, and as I got up, and then the older I got, this interest in paranormal just stayed. And so I used to go out on my own investigating. Eventually, I joined a YouTube channel, me and myself and a friend of mine called Dale. We used to investigate places, haunted locations all around the country, all around the UK, and had some very, very, very weird things happening, and things which I would say is genuine, but I'm a very, very skeptical person. It takes a lot for me to think, oh yeah, it's a spirit, it's a ghost. No, for me, it would need to be something absolutely definite for me to believe it. Even though I left that YouTube channel aside, I now do the podcast where I can talk to really interesting people, either authors or professors or paranormal teams, to try and get their perspective on things, and having that conversation about what the hell is going on in the paranormal, what is going on, because there's stuff that happens. And even though I've not seen a ghost, it is one of those things where I've witnessed things happen which I just can't explain, and it's that keeps me going, which I'm still kind of digging down for the answers from people.
Have you ever heard of the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall? You ever heard of her?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, growing up in the 80s, like I said, I was kind of obsessed with the paranormal and reading books and watching TV shows. There are certain TV shows and there are certain ghost photos were just flooded through in the 80s and 90s in books. One is a favorite called The Ghost Monk of Newby Church, which is a massive favorite of mine, which I love. I adore. I don't care if it's wrong. I don't care if it's fake. I don't care if it's double exposure. It's an awesome photo. And the other one was always shown the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall, which is your quintessential, stereotypical ghost floating down a staircase, coming towards the photographer. The photographer is meant to have seen it, taken a photo, and there you have the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall. And it is one of those defining ghost photos that anybody who's got an interest in paranormal will know straight away what I'm talking about.
Yeah, going right into it. That photo was actually featured in Country Life magazine in 1936. The photographer was the Royal Navy Captain Hubert C. Provand, and his assistant photographer, Andre Shira, were taking photos for an article about Raynham Hall. I will say that I'm not sure what this original article was supposed to be about, but it did get hijacked by this.
Yeah, absolutely.
They've already taken pictures of the staircase, but they're doing some other shots of it. And Shira is already under it's an old-timey camera, under the black sheet that they use. Yeah. And he sees something forming, and he goes, hey, take the cap off the camera. And they take the cap off and they snap this photo. And they did not know what they were seeing until they got the negatives. That being said, the picture was then posted in Country Life magazine, as I said, December 26, 1936. I want this to be clear that it was December 26. We don't have this holiday, but does December 26 mean anything to you, Justin?
Yeah, December 26th is called Boxing Day in the
Okay.
UK. Boxing Day had nothing to do with the sport of boxing. A lot of people think it had something to do with the sport of boxing. It wasn't. It was, I believe it was linked to the church. So boxing up, I think it was presents for the poor as a charitable thing. People would, obviously they celebrate on Christmas Day, and then on Boxing Day, it was a charitable thing where people would box up, I think, gifts for the poor and give them out. Now, Boxing Day in the UK really isn't so much of a thing, to be honest. It's just an excuse to kind of watch more TV and eat more chocolate and stuff like that. It's just people talk about Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Boxing Day. So it's kind of lost a lot of the traditions of how it used to be. It's still regarded as part of the Christmas season in the UK.
Nice. We're going to come back to that. So I just want to make note. Thank you for explaining that. This whole thing was a little bit skeptical from the beginning. People were just like, I don't really know. This seems a little odd. So they had Harry Price come visit Proven and Shearer. Harry Price is a British, or was, I should say, I'm sure he is not around anymore, a British psychic researcher. And he actually joined the Society for Psychical Research in 1920. And then according to Wikipedia, the Society of Psychical Research, or SPR, is a nonprofit organization in the United Kingdom. Its stated purpose is to understand the events and abilities commonly described as psychic or paranormal. It describes itself as the first society to conduct organized scholarly research into human experiences that challenge contemporary scientific models. I did not realize that I was sitting with a member of this research group. Would you like to say anything else about it?
Well, I mean, I'm not at the minute, actually. I would say I was when I was very,
kidding.
very young. I was when I was very young, but I'm not at the moment. But
Okay.
the Society for Psychical Research is, to this day, largely made up of very kind of academic members. And that's not, there are many professors, there are many learned people in this, and it still bases a lot of its publications around academic research in various different forms. But anybody can join the SPR. Anybody would have journals which have been written and the academic papers. And more, I think it's actually trying to shake off some of that stuffiness that I think it has been seen to have had in the past, and think, oh, well, all these people, and I'm just a regular Joe who kind of, I'm not a professor, so is it the kind of place for me? But it really is, because these people and what they produce is still really relevant. You just gotta kind of dig into the details to find out. And when you speak to the members of the SPR, which I have done in the past, they are so welcoming and so lovely, and they want to explain, they want to divulge, and they want to kind of give you the reasons for their research and why you should be looking into it and why you should be questioning things. I think that sometimes gets lost, I suppose, because people love the ghost hunters going out on YouTube, but they may not necessarily want to talk to the parapsychologists and psychologists who look into this in an expert way.
So Harry Price is part of this. He was big about exposing fraudulent mediums and spiritualists, because this is still during the British time where there's a height of spiritualism still happening.
Yeah, hugely, yeah.
So he goes and he interviews them. He goes, you know what? I think they're innocent. I think this is a real photo. Harry Price said that. So clearly it's real. The end of the episode, we're done.
That's it, done.
Yeah, done. No, just kidding. Okay. I want to briefly talk about why I found this story interesting. I personally have never had what I would fully call a paranormal experience.
Yeah.
I just found it very interesting. And I have memories of my one grandmother and her giving me a book to look at. And I believe it was something called like Why I Love England. She was an Anglophile.
Right,
She
okay.
had the bicentennial of some queen, like the record, the everything. Woman from Georgia, like in the United States, not English. I remember flipping through this book and seeing this picture of a ghost and just being completely enamored by it, because I was like, that we have it, guys. They're real. We have a picture.
The Raynham Hall photo is what you would want a ghost to look like.
Yes.
It's almost glowing. It's kind of this form that looks kind of womanly. You can imagine it glowing, gliding down the stairway. It evokes what we expect a ghost to look like.
Very
And
much so.
And when you look at it, you think, okay, that's a ghost. That's a ghost. It's not a thing in a sheet. It's kind of this glowing entity that's coming down a stairway.
Yeah.
And everything about it feels like, spooky old house.
Yeah.
Really old, amazing glowing ghost. Boom, there we go. That's a proper ghost photo.
I love that you're mentioning all those things. They will become relevant later. I saw it and as I said, I was like, this has to be real. And then I didn't think about it on my ghostly journey through life. Yep. I was watching the Paranormal Monkey one afternoon. It's afternoon when you do your show.
Yeah,
for
it
me.
is. Yep.
So one afternoon, and I heard Justin talking about the ghost of Raynham Hall and the brown lady. And I went, oh my God, I haven't thought about her in years.
Yeah.
And then I went, with how much I've looked in and researched paranormal things, I bet if I look into her history, it will not be as magical as it was the first time I saw it. Yeah. And I was like, I gotta do it. And if I'm gonna ruin my own childhood, I'm gonna drag someone down with me.
Brilliant.
So,
okay,
welcome.
Awesome. Not a problem.
Yeah, so welcome. What is your history with the brown lady?
The brown lady of Raynham Hall. I mean, it was one of those kind of, like I say, defining photos I see as a child. And you flick through the ghost books, as I did as a kid because I was slightly weird. And it was one of those photos that I remember just staring at, going, "Oh, that is incredible. That's a ghost. Oh, that's what a ghost looks like. Oh, that's amazing." And everything about it evokes so much. I think when I first watched it, I just gave it as I gave it as it was, I just thought, oh, that's a ghost. Mm-hmm. That's, and I didn't think, well, it might be fake. And it just looked like what I'd expect a ghost to look like. And I was happy with that. And then I moved on and looked more into other ghost stories. And in fact, from that photo, I think the first time I saw it was in a book of ghost stories around the UK. So the Raynham Hall one is in an area called Norfolk in the UK, in the England. And so what I did after that is I thought, well, are there any other ghost stories in other parts of the country? And so that's when I started to look further afield to see whether anything could better that and top that in terms of a ghost photograph.
Yeah.
And there are some good ones, but yeah, I think that one certainly led me to look into other ghost photographs and stories from around the UK.
Sounds like she was a gateway ghost to a lot of us.
To a lot of people, because I would say in terms of famous ghost photos in the UK, I would say three. There's the ghost of, I think it's in Greenwich, and it's going up what's called the Tulip Staircase with a hand on a banister rail. That's an iconic photo. Mm-hmm. The Brown Lady of Raynham Hall is an iconic photo. And for me, the Ghost Monk of Newby Church is an iconic photo. Those three, I would say, are the key ones growing up that I remember.
Yeah. The only one I can think of, this is more of an internet age one, was the old woman sitting in the back of the car and her eyes are glowing.
Yes. Yeah, that one. Yeah.
That's like the only other one that I'm like, that's a ghost photo.
Yeah, that's the ghost of his mother behind him in the car, which was freaky. You start thinking about that, I think, oh my God. Yeah. That's a great photo as well.
Let's dive into the history, because I always think it's very important when we're talking about ghost stories to understand the history behind it. And we are going to start with the history of the building itself. So as you said, it's in Norfolk. The building started being built in 1619 by Sir Roger Townshend. Construction was finished in 1637. You would think that's great. Took a long time. Would really enjoy this house. Poor Roger died the same year it was finished, so he did not get to enjoy this property.
Gutted.
Yes.
Spent all that time in the building. It killed him.
Yeah. I had to redo my kitchen this summer.
Yeah.
I can tell you. It almost killed me. It's done in the Jacobean style, and it is designed by Sir Robert Pratt.
Jacobean. I'll just say Jacobean.
Sorry.
It's all right.
It's my American tongue.
That's fine.
I did not get a degree in architecture, just so everyone understands. Sir Robert spent years going around Europe to be inspired by this, and it was claimed that Raynham Hall was the first of its kind in England, and the design was considered very modern, and it was considered modern, I believe, for a couple of decades, honestly.
Yeah.
Further additions were made in the 1730s. These were made by Charles Turnip Townshend. He was the second Viscount. I'm going to need your help, Justin, if you can, because these Viscounts, these Barons, these Marquesses mean nothing to me. Do they mean anything to you?
It's a very tricky thing. It's a very tricky thing, to be honest.
Okay.
Because there are, like, say, hereditary titles, and there are titles linked to royalty. And there are a number of links to royalty. So, yeah, you can become a Viscount, or you become a Marquess, or you become a Duke, or you might become, some form. And it is usually linked to, like I say, it's usually linked to the royal family. And it could be an honour bestowed on a particular family for a given reason. And it could have been something their family did hundreds of years beforehand.
Okay.
And it's something like a title that's been passed down through the ages, basically.
Would you say that it culturally matters now?
I think, obviously, things have certainly changed now. I mean, there is still a class system, I would say, in the UK. And if anybody presented themselves as a Viscount or a Duke or anything along those lines, you think you'd kind of, you'd kind of doff your cap and you'd be very respectful. And you think, oh my God, this is a man of means, this is a man of money. And they probably have a huge mansion somewhere. The UK is still fascinated by the whole idea of the class system. Hence why you've still got so many people who are loving the likes of Downton Abbey, for instance, or watching The Crown, because people are still fascinated by the life that the upper classes lived a long time ago with their servants and the butlers, and how you got the two you got the very, very rich and you got the very poor living together. And it is still fascinating. Do people kind of think about it on a daily basis? No, because most people just don't have that amount of money and are just struggling to look after themselves and their families. That, I suppose, is what really kind of keeps people's attention, is actually feeding their family. I would say most people don't even give a second thought unless it's the weekend and they want to have a little walk around a lovely country mansion somewhere.
Yeah, I guess I meant, like, I don't know, if someone came up to you, like, if I was like, hi, I'm Joan, Viscountess.
Yeah.
I'm the third of my kind.
I wouldn't bow or, whatever. I don't think I would.
Okay.
And to be honest, unless it was royalty where you think, oh God, I've got to formally present myself, and what do I call you? Is it, it wouldn't be Your Majesty or Your Highness, or because that'd be, the king or queen. So how do so there might be that feeling of what's the correct way to present myself to you, and what do you like to be called? Is it just John, or do you want to be called, something else in a royal title?
Yeah.
It is one of those things where people would still feel like, oh, I think a lot of people, if you're coming across somebody of means like that, wouldn't quite know how to handle it, and they wouldn't quite know how to behave in a particular way or what's expected of them. You'd be thinking, oh God, what do I do?
Interesting. That it's just very interesting to me, just to know the daily habits of that. Okay. But his name is Charles Turnips Townshend. That will also become relevant later. I just like that he had a nickname. And then he hired William Kent for this project. The additions included the carved chimney pieces, mosaic paintings, decorated doorways, and the ceiling in the marble hall. Very decadent for that time.
Yeah.
In the 19th century, the family went bankrupt. There was an agricultural depression. Also, the family kind of had some bad spending habits.
Funny enough, a lot of aristocracy did. And when it's, if you inherit, for instance, a huge mansion house, you only take one bad apple in the family, and they usually rack up gambling debts. And it's a kind of story that's been told again and again and again with a lot of very rich families. It's like, oh, they've inherited this huge mansion house. Great. They think they've got loads of money. They have an inheritance and they don't know how. They've been given it from the age of 20 or so, 20 years old, and they spend it and they gamble it or something like that. And then they lose the house, the ancestral home, whatever. Yeah, this is the kind of story that's repeated a lot in a lot of these places.
That's awful. I'm so sorry to hear that. Am I? Yeah, I'm going to go with I'm sorry to hear it. In 1899, John Townshend inherited the estate. He was the 6th Marquis of Townshend. Cool. Oh, we all agree
I think
with that.
it was probably Marquis.
Marquess. I'm sorry, Marquess.
Yeah.
And then found ways to make money. He sold the family art collection, rented out the hall, and he married a rich wife.
Very clever.
Yeah. So in 1905, that marriage between Gladys Shuress and Gladys began renovating the property in 1921 after John's death. It has been renovated in 1921, which would mean that she was the owner when the photo was taken in 1936. We're now going to talk about the characters of the ghost story, because we all know the photo, but do we know the ghost story of the Brown Lady? So I feel like that gets lost a lot.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with Lady Dorothy, or Dolly Walpole. She was born in September 18th, 1686, and she was from Houghton Hall in Norfolk. She was the 13th child of Mother Mary Burwell and Colonel Robert Walpole. She was the sister of Robert Walpole, who was a Whig politician and the first Prime Minister of Great Britain. And she was also said to be his prettiest sister. Don't know why that was mentioned in several articles, but it was.
Okay.
And she was the second wife of Charles Turnip Townshend. So Charles Townshend was born in April 1674. He was a Whig politician, and at one point in his youth, he was the ward of Colonel Robert Walpole. On November of 1708, he became captain of the yeomen and of the guard and helped to negotiate the Treaty of Utrecht, which will be familiar to anyone who has seen my show prior and seen specifically the episode about the headless nun. In 1713, a series of peace treaties called the Peace of Utrecht were created and ceded the territory to the British. The Acadians were allowed to stay on the land if they signed an unconditional oath of the allegiance to Britain.
Of course they did. That's how the British Empire was brought about, usually.
Oh, yeah. Would you believe that was an argument amongst Catholics also? The French Catholics in Canada? Yeah. Check out that episode. You want to be sad. So back to Charles. King George I, he liked him. His policies held and squashed the Jacobite Rising in 1715, and then he became Secretary of State of the Northern Department. He married Dorothy in 1713. There's a 12 years difference. I'll do that math for you already.
Yeah.
And grew up as neighbors with the Walpoles. Robert and Charles were actually very friendly, but when it came to politics, sometimes they clashed heads. So there was an on again, off again relationship with that. And then he was rumored to have a very violent temper. He stayed in politics until a disagreement with Sir Robert Walpole, and then he retired, and then he died in 1738. Now we're going to move on to some other people that you're like, okay, what's going on here? But they're irrelevant, I promise.
Okay.
We have
Yeah, because I know about Dorothy Walpole.
Okay.
But so I know of the story with her. But in terms of other characters in this, I'm not so clear on. So that'd be really good.
Oh, okay. So we have Lord Thomas Wharton. He was born August 1648, and he had the nickname of Honest Tom. Do you want to give a guess why he was called Honest Tom?
It's either he was actually honest or he was so dishonest they gave him like a nickname which was the exact opposite of his behavior.
Yeah, it's some of that British humor there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He lied a lot. He lied a great amount. He was married to Anne in 1673. She was the granddaughter of Anne St. John, the Dowager Duchess of Rochester. Her uncle tried to prevent her from marrying Thomas because of his bad reputation. He was like, oh God, don't do that.
Yeah.
She unfortunately died in 1685 from syphilis.
A lot of people did.
Yeah.
Those times. It was rife, basically.
So once again, speaking from a former episode, we talked about Olive Thomas. We all know that syphilis is contracted through sexual acts, and Thomas had many mistresses.
Oh, surprise, surprise.
And it was rumored that Thomas just refused to tell Anne that he was even infected.
Good old, gentlemanly act there. Yeah, let's not mention the thing that, my privates are rotting or anything like that, or I can pass it on to my wife. Yeah.
Who died a very painful death. Thanks, Honest Tom. He had a reputation for being a ruthless politician. He was also a Whig politician. All of these guys that were being mentioned were Whig politicians. He was considered a ladies' man, and he died in 1715. Probably from syphilis, honestly. I didn't look that far into it.
I was going to say, probably was syphilis. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then we have one more character to get into before we get into the stories. So there's Countess Lucy Wharton. She was the heiress of the Rathfarnham estate in Ireland. Father was Adam Luftus, the first Viscount of Lisburn, and he was described as hot-tempered, gambler, and an alcoholic. Married her father, it sounds like.
Yeah.
She was the second wife of Thomas Wharton, the mother of Philip, Duke of Wharton, who was the founder of the Hellfires Club.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the Hellfires Club?
There's two kind of famous ones, really. There's one in Ireland, which I'm assuming this is the one in Ireland, and there's one in England as well. There's kind of two. Essentially, what it was very rich, very powerful people, gave them somewhere to practice various sordid things, essentially, in the name, whether they were, some people think they were doing some kind of black magic ritual satanic acts. Some people, it's just a purely sexual thing and orgies, and And essentially, you had rich and powerful people deciding in a kind of Roman way that anything goes. And if we're going to conjure the devil, we should try and conjure the devil. If we're going to have these satanic black ritual sex things, then I don't know. There's a lot of mystery that still surrounds the Hellfire Clubs and what the exact purpose of what they were doing was all about. There's still some like, well, was it that? Was it just a place to have a drink? It was a gentleman's club. Is it a gentleman's club that just went a little bit too far?
Yeah.
And then you have all these rumours and stories. So you have a lot of misinformation. But I will say the Hellfire Clubs in both Ireland and England are regarded as some of the most haunted places. Whether that is or is not linked to the antics of these very rich people and what they supposedly summoned in those caves. But it's a weird, the mystery and the history around that is very, very odd indeed.
Yeah. I'm not sure which Hellfires Club he was the founder of, but I know he got in trouble with one of the royals because he went into a church and then defecated all over the holy objects.
It's just antics. Just fun and games. Doesn't everybody do that on a Friday night after a few drinks?
Me personally, no, never. That's not what I get. But that being said, so just so you understand, like, who we're dealing with, like, he's not part of our story, but he was raised by these two people, so. Yeah. The popular story goes, going back to Dorothy and Charles, is that Dorothy was in a very unhappy marriage with Charles. And she would also spend extravagant amounts of money. So she was a detriment on this household. And just as a reminder, Charles is the one who went and added additions onto this house. So clearly there was abundance of money from somewhere. So she was in this unhappy marriage. And at some point in time, she committed adultery with Lord Warren. And some say she was a full-blown mistress. She had Wharton's illegitimate child.
Okay.
Upon finding out, Charles, outraged, as we said, had a temper. So what does any man do with a temper in the 1700s? Locks their wives up and says, you can't even see your children.
Yeah, a lot of these people would blame the wife for their own, behavior. Absolutely.
Yeah. She's not allowed to see her children. Some say, specifically, Lady Mary Wortley Montague, she has several names, says Dorothy was actually entrapped by Lucy Wharton. Lucy goes, hey, Dolly, come on over. Let's have a girly time. And she does this, like, invites her over for several days because, once again, this is the 1700s. No one went over for just, like, tea, I feel. Everyone stayed for, like, 3 days at the very least to just, like, chill. Yeah. I don't know what people do.
Yeah.
So she invited her over for several days, knowing that her husband would not let Dolly leave with, quote, her reputation intact. We can guess what that means.
Yeah.
Even if she didn't do anything with Lord Wharton, after being in a man's house with that reputation, her reputation was ruined. And it only took word of mouth for Charles to find out and once again lock her up. I should say, before going into anything else, Mary Wortley Montague had an affair with Philip Wharton, so Lucy and Tom's son. Lucy did not like Mary, and I am sure that feeling was mutual. So,
yeah.
The entrapment story, who knows? It could be catty women, like, talking about each other. You know, what happens when you have an affair with someone's son? I don't...
Yeah, and listen, these grievances would last a long time. Mm-hmm. And absolutely. So maybe they're just kind of waiting for an excuse to kind of get one over on the other. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Dorothy remained a prisoner in the home until she died in 1726. Some say she died from smallpox. There's rumors that she may have been starved to death, met a violent end by Charles' hands, or she's not even dead. And in 1726, they had a fake funeral and she lived years after that. That's one story. How do you feel so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Certainly these characters, these people, you're trying to tie some of the controversies of the past to who's the most likely person that may actually be seen as the Lady of Raynham Hall, mm-hmm. and the whys and the wherefores and what was going on at the time. It gives an added context to just a photo. You think, okay, well, who is? Why are they there? Why are they still lurking around? Is it because they're like a restless spirit, a restless soul, as some people believe? Could it be the two main characters? You know, whether it's either Dorothy Walpole or one of the ladies you've just mentioned, that they've both got a reason to feel aggrieved. Let's put it that way. and to be locked into the hall itself.
There is an alternative story as well. So Lord Charles Townshend was the ward of Robert Walpole, the father, not the brother. That's the other thing about this British stuff, is you all like to name everybody the same thing, which, I mean, I do in my family too, but like still.
Yeah, I mean, I think at least in America, you know, like for instance, usually the son inherits the father's name. And so if you've got, like say, they're both called John, for instance, then it would be, you know, I think this happens a lot in old history, you know, like in literacy as well. So if you're reading like Charlotte Bronte or anything by the Brontes, you'll know that all they say, Mr. Johnson and Mr. John Johnson are two different people, and Mr. Johnson is the father and Mr. John Johnson's the son, but they're both called John Johnson. And you think, oh my God, it's like, this is too confusing. At least in America, you have such and such junior or such and such the third, and it becomes easier to work out who's who. But absolutely.
Yeah, no, I think I was surprised because there was a couple of times where I'm like, could we just put junior behind one of them, or senior even? I just want to know who we're talking about. I don't understand timelines. Charles was ward of Father Robert for that time, but not to be confused with a priest. Anyway, so he met Dorothy when they were young, and they fell in love. I'm going to say that because of the 12 years difference.
Yeah.
He asked for her hand in marriage, and her father said, absolutely not. You may not marry her. There were several reasons for this. One, he thought it would look like he had arranged the marriage, and then it would be like a good political prospect for him because Charles came from a good family and took on his father's role at the age of 13. It would have looked good for him. Also, by mention, Dorothy was like 10 or 11 at this time.
Yeah, it's something to consider. You know, your 10-year-old marrying somebody who's a lot older than your daughter. Absolutely, yeah.
Did write a note in here. In the 17th century, the legal age of marriage was 12 for a girl and 14 for a boy. So it would have not been legal yet either, but still.
No, yeah. Pretty close to the mark, but yeah, exactly, yeah.
Found interesting, and I also kind of knew this by going over the Anne Boleyn story as well. Typically, an early match like this, they would not consummate the marriage till many years later, which I found interesting. So it answers a lot of questions, honestly. I did write a note to myself. I went, still doesn't feel great.
It's still not good. This is still icky.
Yeah.
This is just not right.
We waited a few years, so now she's 13. Great. Love that. Instead of marrying her, he married Elizabeth Pelham. She was the daughter of the first Baron Thomas Pelham of Lafton. They had 5 children together, and then she unfortunately died in 1711. Charles and Dorothy reconnected, and they got married in 1713. Her brother Robert Walpole gave permission this time, so I assume dad was gone, and he gave permission. And the ceremony was actually at Raynham Hall. They were married for 13 years, and they had 7 children, with 6 of them reaching adulthood. While they were apart, so that time where he was married to the other woman, Dorothy did have an affair with Thomas Wharton. There has been claims that Lucy Wharton would help facilitate Thomas's affairs because they were both known to have affairs.
Yeah, just look the other way. And basically, I'll not say anything about your affair if you don't say anything about my affair, and we'll just carry on this weird relationship of having affairs with other people.
Yeah. The alternate to this story is that actually Dorothy did go over the house at one point, but her brother Robert had heard what was happening and ran to their house and demanded his sister come back out because he knew like her reputation would be ruined if she was in there. So he's like, get out, get your butt out here. A BBC Norfolk interview in 2009 had it reported that there were papers and medical reports found back in the 1960s saying Dorothy was not abused and had a happy life and was actually really adored and loved by Charles as well. What happened to Charles? Charles had a disagreement with Robert after Dorothy's death, as we mentioned. After his retirement from politics, he became a turnip farmer.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
To give you an idea, like Norfolk is a very agricultural area. So it wouldn't be uncommon for there to be a lot of farming in that particular area of England. So, but yeah, to go from that to a turnip farmer, it's kind of a bit weird. Let's put it that way.
He championed turnips as the new winter fodder crop to feed cattle, had
Amazing.
a large-scale turnip production on his estate, and that's why he is called Charles Turnip now.
Wow.
Which I just wanted to mention because I thought that was really funny.
That's, yeah.
Honestly,
well, good for him and his turnips. Bless him.
honestly take turnip over honest Tom. So I'm going to talk about the ghost stories now, because that's all about like the life and what possibly led to the ghost. There are several sightings of the brown lady. The first being in 1835 on Christmas. A bunch of people were invited to Raynham Hall for a Christmas gathering. Colonel Loftus claimed when approaching his room for the night, he saw a woman in an older-fashioned brown dress roaming the halls with a lantern. The next evening, Lotus claimed he saw the ghost again, this time much closer, and she had a glowing face and empty eye sockets. Apparently, this freaked a lot of the staff out, and some of them left employment from Raymond Hall after that.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Would you stay if you heard about a glowing
I would,
face?
but I'm weird. So, you know, I'm like, a ghost with no eyes, I'm there.
She can't see me, but I can see her? Cool. Sounds great.
Yeah. No wonder she needs the lantern to see where she's going with no eyes.
Right? So the next was 1836 with Captain Frederick Merritt. He was a Navy officer and also an author of a series of popular sea novels and good friends with Charles Dickens. The father of Florence Merritt, she was the author of spiritualist work, There Is No Death. Just to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's a good link. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that.
Just to keep that in mind. Frederick walks in there, doesn't believe there's ghost. He goes, you are all silly people. This is clearly smugglers.
Oh, clearly.
They're clearly smugglers, and they're trying to keep people away from the hall.
Okay.
And he goes, let me stay. I'm going to stay at the hall, and I'm going to figure this out. And they're like, okay. You do that, Fred. Gotcha. He is, one night, I think it's the third night he's there. He's staying there, and he's starting to get undressed for bed. By undressed for bed, we mean he's wearing a shirt and trousers. So, like, what I would call casual Friday. But anyway.
Yeah.
Two of the guys that were in the party come to his room. I should also mention, he's like, let me stay in the haunted, like the most haunted room. Because that's how much I know it's not her. Yeah. And apparently a portrait of the brown lady is there. He goes, okay. And so these two guys come to his room and they're like, hey, we just got a new gun that came in from London. Do you want to look at it? And he's like, duh, I want to look at your gun.
I'm there.
Why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
He goes, let me grab the loaded revolver that I keep under my pillow every night. Don't know why you'd keep it there, but
Is that to shoot the ghost? I'm assuming it's in case a ghost is seen, so or the smugglers.
I think it's the smugglers, but I would still argue, gun safety wise, don't keep it under the pillow.
Yeah, loaded. Yeah.
I don't know. As I said, I don't own it, so I don't know. They go to the room, they look at the gun. He goes, that's a gun. They go, I know. And they're starting to walk back, and they see this woman down the hall holding a lantern. He's like, oh my gosh, I'm in a state of undress. How? I can't let a woman look at me in my shirt and trousers. They duck into this part, like a doorway in the hall, because the doorways are very large in the hall.
Yeah.
And this woman keeps coming closer and closer. And he's like, I don't know, something's off about this woman. And they goes and she stops right in front of them and then turns to look at them and has what is described as a malicious grin on her face. He recognizes this is the woman who's in the portrait. And he gets so freaked out and does the only thing that we know a man with a revolver is gonna do. And he shoots the ghost.
Amazing. Yeah. Not talk to it.
Yeah, no.
Or consider it or, just shoot it.
You were just worried before about how uncouth it was that you were not fully dressed. And now you're just going to shoot her in the face? Cool. Sounds great.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are those British manners that I'm hearing so much about.
Well, yeah, rather you shoot the ghost in the face than be seen in your nightwear.
Yeah. How embarrassing. It goes through her. And she just disappears. And
Amazing.
Apparently there is still a gun mark hole in the door frame at Raymond Hall. But this story does come from Florence, his daughter. So, who knows?
Pinch of salt, maybe. Yeah. Exactly, yeah.
So in 1926, Gladys' son, who was the owner during 1936, says that George, his name is, sees a woman on the staircase with his friend. And he tells his mother. And he goes, I know who that woman is. It's the woman from the portrait. His mom's like, oh, yes, it is the woman from the portrait. So George sees a ghost on the staircase, 10 years prior to the photo. As I mentioned, in 1936, the photo is taken. It's published in Country Life magazine in 1936 and then later republished in Life magazine on January 4th, 1937. Harry Price investigated, believed their story. The photo did come out when spiritualism was popular in Britain, and it was specifically during the time where people thought the camera could catch things the human eye could not see, and there was a lot of looking into that.
Yeah.
The ghost has been rarely seen or reported to be seen after this.
Yeah, I've got to say, I've never heard anything from Raynham Hall specifically around a ghost being seen by the current owners, the staff, or anybody else. So it is one of those weird peculiarities that they have this hugely famous photograph. You'd think that it would be up for people to investigate, or there have been made reports from Raynham Hall saying, "Yeah, the brown lady is still here." There's an eyewitness. Nothing at all that I've seen since that photograph was taken from Raynham Hall. But as far as I'm aware.
And also, I should mention, the reason that you might not hear about the investigation is that this is one of the rare places that is still private property. They do not allow people to come in.
Yeah,
on very rare occasions, they will.
Absolutely. I think it's and even if they do allow people, I know somebody who went to Raynham Hall because they were fascinated by this ghost photograph. I think they had like an open day. And so they were able to walk around, and they caught glimpse of the staircase, the proper staircase. And they were really interested in seeing the windows and the light, and could it have been a reflection from something else? And it was one of those where they were kind of like shepherded past it. So I don't think they even had time to take a photo of it or anything like that. So yeah, it's they have been inside there. And I think mainly that they were just looking at, in the time that they had, looking at the windows at the top of the staircase to see whether there's any possible reason, as a possible explanation for the ghost.
Do they think they were rushed on purpose? Like, quick, don't look.
I don't know. I mean, I just know that they didn't take. I mean, I don't know whether photography was prohibited or banned. I mean, because it's a privately owned home. Yeah. So that could have been it. Because I think it's quite strange that they didn't take any photos of the stairway, particularly knowing the story of this particular ghost photo.
There are theories of why you don't see her anymore. I don't think they're great, but they are theories. It's because she's at other places. One is Houghton Hall. King George IV said he woke up in the middle of the night and had a woman standing on the foot of his bed, and he identified her as Dorothy. And he left saying, quote, "Not spend another hour in this accursed house, for tonight I have seen that which I hoped to God I never see again," unquote.
Nice.
So
I like that.
We all trust the king.
That's a good one.
Yeah. The other one is Sandringham House.
Sandringham. Yeah. I mean, if it's Sandringham, then obviously that's still a royal residence.
Okay. Both hauntings seem to have her looking more youthful and like more happy, where her ghost at Raynham is described as like older and sadder looking. She's not the only ghost there. One is a caretaker and his cocker spaniel, which I think is fun.
If there's a dog ghost, I'd like to see a dog ghost.
Let's go see the dog ghost. Yeah. There's another one that's two children, just unnamed children, running
like
around.
The Shining.
Yes. There's possible that Charles is still there. He's said to be floating above the ground specifically, so that's fun. It reminds me of the Hat Man character from Haunting of Hill House. Yeah. So I don't want to see that. And then also the Duke of Monmouth is said to be there.
Okay. It's like a party of ghosts. But
right? And I wrote a note to myself. I said, don't even talk about him. He's a side quest of his own, especially with the iron mask and everything like that. I'm like, I don't want to. He's his own thing. We can talk about him later.
He's a future episode.
Yeah. It will be forever to go over him, because once again, we'll need another history lesson about who's related to who, and who has syphilis, who doesn't have syphilis, the whole thing. I'm going to go into some theories about the photo itself. One, that it was faked. Here are a couple of ideas about how it could have been done. One is putting grease on the camera lens.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that one?
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those theories where you get like Vaseline or like I say, grease, cover the lens, coat the lens, and you get this mushy kind of obviously consistency, and that, I mean, to me, it is possible, I suppose, but the actual the smush of, let's say, the grease on there, the ghost photo looked quite defined. I feel if it was like mushed on the lens, you'd expect it to not look so well defined, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's a theory, but I don't think it's a good one, I've got to say. I think it's more likely something else.
Yeah, I think it looked more finger-like too, or like you'd see the imprint of some
kind.
kind.
Exactly. It would look like a blob. Yeah. And this seems, like I say, a little bit more defined, a little bit more
of a shape.
Yeah, exactly.
The other one that we've mentioned previously is the double exposure. An analysis in 1937 notes other visual artifacts in the photo. It's cropped out of the photo that most people see, these double artifacts, and the banister appears to be crooked. I don't fully see the banister being crooked. Because if you look at the actual banister from other photos, it goes down and then levels itself and then goes down again.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't personally see that, but
I think people make a lot of the reflections on the banister. Mm-hmm. And they're saying that if you look at the ghost photo, the reflections on the right hand side, as you look at it, as you look at the photograph, they're saying, well, the top of the banister, the reflection just doesn't seem quite right. Mm-hmm. And they make a lot of big deal about the reflections not seeing quite right, and they see that as well, because it doesn't seem quite as I'd expect it to look, then that's possibly a double exposure, and that's the reason that they gave for it. And it's all around the reflection on the banister rail that go down the stairway. As far as I'm aware, that's the thing which they kind of highlight as the reason why they think it's a double exposure.
Yeah. And then the other one that I found interesting, didn't really think about, was the photo was taken at 4 p.m., but it appears much darker.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the exposure of the camera, really. If they didn't have the lens cap open for long enough and not enough light gets in, it's going to be a darker exposure. It doesn't matter what time of the day or night it is. It's if they don't have it open long enough, then it's going to appear dark. Yeah.
Well, they said that might have been done to hide some of the anomalies. So it still could be that didn't get enough light, but they did it quickly because they knew they might get something like this.
Well, part of me thinks, I was going to play devil's advocate of this one.
Go ahead.
Right? If you're a photographer and you see something moving down the stairs quite quickly, first of all, a photographer is going to want to have, the issue with photography is obviously in a dark location, you need the lens cap open for longer to allow enough light to come in. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. So to have it fully, properly exposed, the lens cap will be off. But this photographer, if they've seen the ghost coming down, they might think, all right, I need to capture this. It's happening right in front of me. I've got to capture it quickly. So therefore, the lens cap comes off for a short amount of time, comes back on. It's a darker exposure, but the ghost is there. Mm-hmm. Also, if you have it opened longer, because to account for the fact that it's moving and it's in a dark, let's say in a like a dimly lit corridor or staircase, you'd get more of a blur going down. You wouldn't capture a defined form. You would just see a blur because it's a long exposure. Therefore, it'd be a bit blurrier. So this shows that this photograph was taken quite quickly, may not have had enough time to fully light up the staircase, but was long enough to actually just capture, let's say, the ghost, rather than it just being a messy blur down the corridor. I mean, there's like I say, lots and lots of theories around it.
There is somewhat to what you're saying too. There is the opposing theory, I will say, it's on the other end of the spectrum, that actually light got on to the photographic plate. And this was decided by the Society Psychical Research. There we go. I want to say psychology is so bad, but it's not that. Psychical Research was the one who said actually light leaked on to the plate, was their theory of what happened.
I mean, I think that's actually a good theory, because you do have these anomalies with the old technology where light may leak through. They use these bellows type cameras, then there may have been a tear in the bellows and may have allowed light in. It just shone this particular area on the plate. I think that's a very good theory, actually.
Going back to the double exposure, I do want to bring up one theory that I find very interesting, and I go back and forth on it in my mind for a couple of reasons. But I didn't mention that back in my childhood, I was raised Roman Catholic. And this becomes relevant in the way that there is the idea that actually it's a double exposure with a statue of Mary. Like
of the Virgin Mary.
Yeah, the Virgin Mary. When I was younger, I thought it looked like a statue of the Virgin Mary because I was used to seeing that. The reason I personally go back and forth on this is one of the things that are different about Protestants and Catholics is how much the Virgin Mary is shown.
Yes.
A lot of Catholic homes will have a statue of the Virgin Mary, and it's very prevalent at the church. Not so much at Protestant churches. The Townsend family at the time and during the Raynham Hall ghost story were Protestant. But there was also said from one source I looked at, and I don't fully trust this source because they didn't cite anything, they just said things, was that there is a small chapel under that staircase where they clearly got the statue of the Virgin Mary.
Okay. Yeah.
But I don't know why there would be a statue of the Virgin Mary there.
I think, well, the thing is as well, if you looked at a statue of the Virgin Mary and then you looked at that photo, you think, actually, that looks the same as the statue of the Virgin Mary. Your brain sees the two things. You think, oh, well, actually, yeah, of course, that's the statue of the Virgin Mary. That's what they took a photo of. That's been on a double exposure. Boom, there it is. I think sometimes people see what they want to see in some cases, because actually what you can actually see is it's just a shape. I mean, yeah, you can see the Virgin Mary in it. I suppose the other thing which lends itself to a double exposure is that you have this kind of almost glowing figure of the ghost coming down the stairway, and yet no glow on the staircase itself. So around the stairway, where the ghost is seen coming down the stairs, you can't see a glow, let's say, coming from the ghost on the stairs or the banisters or anything else. You just have the glow of the ghost, but it seemingly does not seem to have affected the stairs, which lends itself to the idea it's a double exposure as well, you know?
Yeah. I think specifically for me with the Virgin Mary that came up is because when you look at the photo, it looks veiled. Like it looks like it's wearing a veil. My younger self had a hard time not understanding that it wasn't a bride, but then I was also like, it's the silhouette to me. And I do agree with what you're saying. It's almost like a weird pareidolia where I'm like, well, I look at this photo and then I look at this photo, I'm like, oh, that's the same photo. So I do find that theory interesting because of my personal connection with it, where I was like, I did think that at one point in time. But also, why?
Yeah, I mean, you can't necessarily see a face as such, but if you look at the top half of the figure, you see a line coming down the middle of the actual figure, and you think, well, actually, that does look like a veil.
Yeah.
That could easily be a figure of the Virgin Mary. And if you did it side by side shot of the statue of the Virgin Mary, then I think very easily you could go, well, that's about the same as what I'm seeing. You know, is that what the photographer's just done? And for what purpose? Was it to get more people to visit Raynham Hall? Was it just to perpetuate the ghost story for whatever reason? It is, and it always will be, like a really interesting image.
And so you brought up, why would they take this photo? Which I agree. I think that's like a big question to ask. If they were going to fake it, what's the motivation behind it? And of course, there was like some money involved because they got it. It was the height of spiritualism. That's like a knock against them. But like, to me, that doesn't seem like enough for you to just be like randomly like, hey, wouldn't that be great if this was a ghost story all of a sudden?
Yeah. Well, this isn't the kind of thing. See, Country Life magazine are not in the business of photographing ghosts. Let's put that out there. It's usually they go around and they will photograph stately mansions and the story of the family who lives there, and and things like that. They still, I think the Country Lifestyle magazine still exists, and that's what they still do. They go to and take photos. So taking a photograph of a staircase is absolutely in the remit of what they would be expected to do as a magazine. They would not like some kind of, even though spiritualism was still big and it just, after the First World War going in towards the Second World War and things like that. But in the 1930s, are they specifically going out to photograph ghosts or have a ghost story? I don't think so.
Yeah, it feels a little odd. As I mentioned, the photo was posted December 26th, which is Boxing Day, which I'm not sure how much this is because I've only seen it in one space, which is when a lot of Charles Dickens-like stories are made and posted for people to read. So some people are like, a ghost story on Boxing Day?
Yeah. And then there's a huge tradition of Christmas ghost stories. Been the same since Victorian times, I would say. Like from the likes of Charles Dickens onwards, it has become a thing to have ghost stories at Christmas, almost as much as it is during Halloween.
Speaking of ghost stories, a year prior to the photo being taken, Gladys Townsend published a book called True Ghost Stories.
Nice. Okay.
There was 32 tales in there. The stories of Raynham Hall were the first ones, and she claimed that she was living in a haunted house. Maybe the owner, having her house taken pictures of, was like, hey guys, my son saw a ghost on those stairs over there. Just saying. You want to mention my book? Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, you can definitely see, if that's the case, you can definitely see how it might be in the owner's interest to have a conversation with the photographer. Say, could you, have this ghost story? Could you conjure a ghost for me?
Yeah, just keep
And the
that
photographer
in
goes,
mind.
I know a way of doing that. Mm-hmm. I just need a woman.
Yeah.
And what's he around? Oh, there's a Virgin Mary statue, and I think I can do something. So
Yeah.
it's not beyond the realms of possibility. It depends how professional we regard these photographers as.
Who knows? And as I said, I'm not going to include it in my resources because I don't trust it as a resource. There was one article that was like, clearly these were failed photographers just looking to restart their career, very angry about a lot of things. And I was like, okay, I don't know what's happening. Why are you so upset? Please tell me.
Yeah.
But I also, before we end this, I want to talk about a theory about the ghost story and why it's so interesting and why it has been, besides the photo, used. So the story is interesting because it models a Gothic tale. There's a Castle of Ontario in 1764 was a popularized Gothic novel in Britain. It was written by Horace Walpole, Dorothy's nephew. So we're going to look at Gothic tale characteristics. There is ancestral curses, there's supernatural elements, there's grand settings like castles with hidden passageways, and there's also a trend of women being locked away, especially by male relatives. And this was actually really big during the Victorian era when women had a fear that their relatives were going to lock them away.
Yeah. Yeah. And not, it happened. So, it's not that surprising.
Mm-hmm. No, it's not unfounded fears. They exist. The story model goes as followed. There's a violent husband. There's a beautifully wronged woman who is then locked up. There's a charming villain. There's a manipulative wife, an old house, suspicious death, and a supernatural element looking for justice. So I think we keep this story alive because it has such telltale signs of a Gothic story.
As a kid, when you first look at this photo, you just see it as a photo, as a ghost image. But like you've just done, the more you kind of talk about it, the more you kind of look into the history of it, you think, actually, there's more than meets the eye on this one. There's a backstory, there's a location. And like you say, it has all the elements of what we'd want a ghost story to be. Mm-hmm. Therefore, lures you back to that photo. And you think you've got this mansion house, you've got this the woman of Dorothy Walpole and what happened to her. You've got this mystery around who this woman was and what may have befell her and what was going on in her life. You've got the mystery of, well, is this genuine? Is this just a double exposure? You've got the history of the family. The location itself is kind of alluring because it has all this history and it's on a grand staircase. Yeah, it's got lots and lots of elements to it, this photo. So yeah, you kind of, the more you look into it, the more interesting it becomes.
I think I'm only a little bit saddened by the photo because I do feel like it overshadows the actual ghost story, which is very interesting because like when you think about like the means of how she became a ghost, you're like, yeah, sure, okay.
So the thing is, the photo is as great as it is quite bland in a way compared to the ghost story.
Yeah.
So you don't see her holding a lantern. You don't see sunken black eyes because she has no eyes, and you don't see any of the detail. So actually, if you look at the ghost story, you think, oh, that's kind of more horrific, a lot more horrific than this kind of simple way, straightforward, blurry ghost image. I mean, you think actually, if you look into the ghost story, it's scarier than the actual photo itself.
Yeah, that, and as I said, I just very much enjoyed learning about these characters that come from, and that's all I can call them because they're in history. I don't know their motivations. I don't know what's actually true and what is like hearsay or whatever.
Yeah.
But like these characters of like, the charming villain that Wharton is, where he just like lured in young girls and things like that. And then you had his scheming wife. And like there are clear villains, and like poor Dorothy is just, so helpless in this own narrative about like what was she to do? She was just a woman who was a victim of her times, and like her reputation was all she had. And
we're kind of brought up with these kinds of stories of the aristocracy. Of looking at them with suspicion and the mistreatment. And some of it is based in fact. Some of it comes from the likes of Charles Dickens, who portrayed these larger-than-life characters, the very rich and versus the very, very poor. You grow up with those kinds of stories in the UK. Let's take it right up to modern times. Films like Saltburn, which is all around a private family living in a huge mansion and their very strange ideas of relationships with each other and to others, the relationship with regular people, let's put it that way. This whole story carries on in different forms. You know, and there is that suspicion of what are these people getting up to in these grand houses? What is going on? How do they view the rest of us? And what are they up to in there? It links into all of that kind of narrative.
It does remind me of, as you were mentioned, like The Crown and all that stuff, is like the idea of, at least in the United States, I think we like it because of our relationship with capitalism in that way of money is power. It's so amazing to see these people who were just born into power.
There's still a lot of, like, for instance, the royal family. There's a lot of people just don't know what the working relationships are like with each other, because if they're born into it and that weight of history on them, how can you possibly be normal when you're born into the royal family? And you have all that privilege. You see now more, certainly in the UK, you know, yes, you've got the royalists who they can do no wrong, but the likes of Andrew, let's say, right now, where you're looking at this going, this is just a spoilt child who's been allowed to get away with stuff for so long. And it isn't all prim and proper. And actually, if you look into it, this is what the royal family has always done. They've always taken advantage of their position, whichever way. They have had privilege and money and power. And these are just regular people who obviously are like the rest of us. Some people just... You know, maybe, I don't know, it just makes people think, oh, no, I wouldn't want that. You know, because it screws you up, basically.
Thank you so much. Where can people find you?
Paranormal Monkey Podcast happens every Monday, different guest every single Monday. I have just a general kind of chat kind of show called the Chips Tea Party, which I have every other Thursday. So all on YouTube. If you look up the Paranormal Monkey, that's on there. But also, if you look up Paranormal Monkey on Facebook, I'm on Facebook as well, on Instagram, and the regular kind of places, really.
Raynham Hall is steeped in history. However, the gossip and the hearsay over centuries create a ghost story which overshadowed factual details, which were then covered up even more by the sensational photo we have all come to recognize. I feel I learned a lot about Raynham Hall, but I'm still left with a lot of questions. What actually happened to Dorothy Walpole? Did the photographers have a motivation to perpetuate the Brown Lady ghost story? As a gothic tale with clear villains and victims, convoluted into historic whispering campaigns, I may never fully know these answers. I fear we may be doomed to stay focused on the image, but never see the bigger picture. Well, what do I know? I'm just some lady talking about some frights. Thank you again so much to Justin from the Paranormal Monkey Podcast for joining me on this episode. I highly suggest checking out his channel, which is linked in the description down below. He's a ton of great, informative guests, and honestly, I've gotten a couple of show ideas just from watching his channel. Once again, please go over and watch his latest video, like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching me. If you want to see more of me, you can go to the description and there'll be a link tree there to all the social media. Go follow me over there. Please comment, like, or subscribe. If you do that, I will give you 10%. You could get 10% funnier. You could get 10% smarter. You could even get 10% more photogenic. But you won't know until you do one of those. Or if you do all three, it becomes 30%. It does build on itself. Once again, thank you so much. Hope to see you in the next one. Bye!